And welcome everybody to this Spirit Unbounded session, which will focus on a forthcoming feature-length documentary entitled Wonderfully Made LGBT plus Religion. And we are very blessed today to have with us, really the two key people to whom we owe this documentary, Mark McDermott and Yuval David. And I think the menu that we're going to have for this session is quite simple. We will have an introduction by Mark and Yuval themselves, followed by the trailer for the forthcoming documentary. And after that, after you've savored the trailer, we will open up the floor for questions.
Thank you very much, Luca, and hello, everybody, and thank you very much for being part of this little introduction to our project. My name is Mark McDermott. My husband here is Yuval David, and we are the producers of this two-part project, which includes a documentary and also the creation of some new religious iconography that reimagines 17 or 1800 years of Christian iconography that has always depicted Jesus basically the same way, as a white or Caucasian man with blonde hair and blue eyes. We wanted to reimagine that iconography a different way, which is far more inclusive, as you will see from the trailer that we're about to show you. And we turned not only we created not only the art, but also created a documentary that is a little bit about the art, but that also interviews a lot of the leading figures in the movement for greater church inclusion of LGBTQ people and greater diversity much more generally. So we are very thankful to be here. Look forward to your questions after we view the trailer. I want to also introduce my husband, Yuval, who will have a few words to say. And we can also talk a little bit later about how and when the film and the art will be available.
My name is Yuval David. I am the director of the film, and Mark here, the executive producer. We, as Mark described, we leaned into the power of art to represent the power of film and the visual arts of this project, Wonderfully Made LGBTQ plus R, the R being for religion, where we worked on representing and advocating for LGBTQ Catholics, but also everybody who is somehow connected to LGBTQ Catholics, which reaches out to the broader LGBTQ community and the broader Catholic community. So we know that when we represent very specific demographics, we are also representing the people who know and love them, their friends, their families, their neighbors, and their broader communities. So that's something that we worked on here, and we're so honored that you've created the space here for us to share the art and the documentary, even if it's just the trailer at this point, to help you within your life missions, within your initiatives of representation and advocacy. And as Mark mentioned, the art and the film is so very soon going to be available publicly. In the chat, I already put in the links of wonderfullymadefilm.com, which you can also access from lgbtqreligion.com, and we're across social media. We're in this together, and we invite all of you to connect across social media to help us amplify this project and help this project amplify you. Without further ado, I will play the trailer.
The gold standard is a father and a mother creating a family. That's what was ordained by nature and nature's God.
Historically, in the Catholic Church, LGBT people have been largely invisible.
Homosexual activity is sinful.
And when they are talked about, they're talked about in terms of sinfulness.
You don't want the gay liberation movement to morph into something like the Ku Klux Klan.
This is the weaponization of ministry to make us believe that we are not the people God made us to be.
If we can't imagine ourselves in the image of God, that does irreparable spiritual harm to us.
Iconography is important because we believe in a God that we want to have a relationship with. This project welcomes LGBTQ plus people by depicting Jesus as suffering with and for them.
We put out a casting call and got about 500 submissions.
I had the unfortunate event of being kicked out of my church.
People like me weren't welcome in that space.
We're using the power of art to help LGBTQ people and create change.
Human beings can change things. You can change things.
I was doing youth ministry, and then they changed direction and they kicked out all the LGBTQ people.
And it's just exhausting. It's unforgivable that we put these kinds of burdens on one another.
The LGBTQ community is under attack. It's really impossible to underestimate the impact that the Catholic Church has had in a very detrimental way.
The old ways have to change.
When you persecute the LGBT person, you're persecuting Christ.
No one can silence you. No one can silence me except myself.
These images tell the story of God and our LGBTQ sisters and brothers.
That is beautiful.
To see LGBTQ suffering reflected in the story of Jesus.
This is the stuff that I should have seen when I was younger.
Oh, how gorgeous.
These images can be life-giving.
This is beautiful.
So this was just the trailer for the film, as it's often called a teaser, to show you what this project is and invite you to connect. So as I mentioned before, definitely click on the links that I shared, and I know that Spirit Unbounded is also sharing these links as well, so you can share them with the broader community. One of the things that struck me while creating this project, as a Jewish person, as a Jewish Israeli, was I'm married to a Catholic American man, and I saw what his challenges were even before we started this project, and throughout my LGBTQ advocacy, seeing what the challenges of LGBTQ Catholics were, and people who felt alone, people who felt like they didn't have a community. And I said, what are you talking about? There's a community that exists. Here are people who've dedicated their lives to supporting LGBTQ people, to supporting Catholic people, and to supporting LGBTQ Catholic people. So what is it that I can do as an ally to help you and to amplify your voices and to help you find each other and collaborate with each other and help advance each other? And that was really my approach as the director of this project. I often refer to it as being the person who just made sure that the stage was polished, that the lights were on and the microphones were on, to let all of you dance upon that stage and share who you are and share your truth.
Just picking up on what you just said then, Yuval, do you think do you think Mark has had bigger challenges in his life than you? I mean, is there a difference between being an LGBTQ Catholic and Jewish person? Or, just in large? I mean, that's a very simple question. I'm sure you can do better than that.
I can start by answering from my perspective, and then of course Yuval can as well. But I think on the whole, it is harder, or it's been more of a challenge from a Catholic perspective than a Jewish perspective. However, there are different strands within Judaism. Okay, not all of them have the same perspectives or attitudes about LGBTQ people. Some are a lot like the Catholic Church in having an official position that is not very welcoming, but there are much larger elements within Judaism that are far more welcoming, whereas the Catholic Church is fairly monolithic in its formal position. Now, all that said, even within Catholicism, there's Catholicism and there's Catholicism, and it's very, very church and diocesan and priest specific and bishop specific. And in this country, there's actually quite a divide. This country being the US, there's quite a divide within the church on attitudes towards this issue. So very good question, a little bit of a murky, complicated answer, but at least I think those are overall general perspectives on it. From my own personal perspective, it was very difficult. And I wasn't able to really start coming to terms with a lot of these things till I was in my mid-40s.
In light of the times that we're in right now, as Israel and truly the world has faced one of the largest terror attacks that is still continuing, as a Jew, as an Israeli, I am deeply affected, deeply wounded, and all of the PTSD that I have faced and my people have faced all rises up again. So to be an LGBTQ Jewish person is to be of two different marginalized, victimized minorities. So that definitely makes it hard to be both Jewish and LGBTQ. Within the Jewish community, I have felt support by being LGBTQ. I've had lesbian rabbis, gay rabbis, trans rabbis within the Reform, the Reconstructionist movements, even the conservative movements, and also within Orthodox movements, where people are invited to express and explore the full human potential, the full human expression. Even in the Bible, we use different pronouns. God is referred to as he, as she, as them, as it, as a plural, as a singular. And it really opened up conversations in the Hebrew. Whenever I would read the Bible in spiritual texts translated into English or Spanish or Latin, I sometimes would be perplexed and saying, no, that's not what it means, because it wouldn't translate exactly. And I think that might have been the beginning of the challenges that other people faced in understanding what is the word, what do we really believe? But obviously today, when I hear a question, who has it hard? I come to you today from a very traumatized place, having friends and colleagues of mine who have been brutally slaughtered on Saturday in Israel in the hands of Hamas and Palestinian Jihad. People who have been abducted and their whereabouts are still unknown, and we can only hope and pray. So creating a project like this and showing this project, which is meant to use a creative approach to advocacy, it's something that kind of helps me during this time of trauma, of saying, well, how can I be creative in this moment, even as we share this film and are sitting here and I'm talking about LGBTQ Catholics and not about what has happened in Israel and what is still happening. So the point is, there's a power when we explore how to represent ourselves, how to express ourselves, and how to help other people express themselves. The point of that is, when we need support, we need to reach our hands out and ask for that help. And when other people need support, we don't need to wait for them to reach their hands out. We need to be there, ready and waiting and willing to support and taking action. And that's what this entire project has meant for me. And that's what I'm leaning back upon today as I grieve.
Thank you, Yoel. It's so hard what you're going through, and your friends and family. Just to let you know, Luca has lost signal. This usually means that we're doing something really good. And I always think the dark forces suddenly gather when something, I've never heard him lose signal ever before. So I will continue with some questions until people have put comments about their heartbreaking for you, and someone has seen your film and says it's really beautiful and really needs to be seen. Another person is concerned that there is no trans representation in the Vatican Synod, in the Synod of Bishops, which, you know, is very important. I think we were told that because Father James Martin was invited, and who is interviewed, isn't he, in your film, he's in your trailer, that will do, you know. We've covered that one, and which of course is a very strange approach. Do you feel that the Pope has made any significant move this last month? Because there has been this sort of idea that, and I think it was in your not in your trailer, but the idea that over to you.
It actually is touched upon in the trailer about
That's what I thought. I saw it. Yeah.
Same-sex blessings. Now, the Pope has made movement, but he does it in his own interesting way, which is a little bit elliptical, is the word that comes to mind when I think of how he does things. He doesn't really want to stand from on high and decree, like I think it's his prerogative to. He knows that he's the head of a church with many, many different views in it, over 1 billion people with very diverse backgrounds, and that I think he would like to see people come along as opposed to be drug along. And the way he does that is by carefully doing things here or there, including by very personal encounter, the way he writes letters to people. He's written letters to Jim, to Janine Gramick, to the outreach gathering that Jim organizes every year and that I attend every year, complimenting them and extolling the virtues of what they have done. And so I think he absolutely has done that, and has also frankly done it in the strategic appointment of cardinals. A great majority of whom now have been selected by him and will select his successors. So I think the answer is yes, that he has, but there is this very big institutional and entrenched structure that still is very beholden to the idea of clericalism, and also, I think, wealth, and focuses on where money comes from in the church, which is often from conservative elements, especially in the US, that are not really arrayed in favor of a lot of the things that the Pope likes to say and do. And so I don't think he can necessarily do it all himself, because he's part of this big institution, worldwide institution that has a lot of different views. And that's why I think what he is doing with the Synod is so vitally important, through listening and discernment and prayer, which again is, I think, his way of hoping that people will come along in their own way, as opposed to being drugged along, kicking and screaming. Yeah, absolutely. We have a panel on Friday in Rome, which is the requested topic was the meaning of the Synod for LGBTQIA and ally Catholics. And I will be we've got various different people representing different reform groups from across the world, and be interested to hear what they feel the meaning is. I've seen videos from them where they've said that they're living this inclusivity in their families and their churches. But obviously you have to go and find a church which embraces you, and not all parishes do. And I see from your trailer, there's so much suffering. Can you tell us a bit more? Luca's sending me his questions because he's got locked out, but I'm finding them difficult to see because it won't download on my phone. Everything's been a very difficult time. Tell us more about the art. You auditioned lots of different people, and then they have taken on they've become Christ in your art. Just tell me more.
So this documentary film, the whole project started as an art project. Right. The documentary film began as a project documenting the process of creating new Catholic iconography using the traditional representations seen throughout art history of Jesus, how Jesus was represented, and understanding the power that art has as a form of representation and advocacy. So the thought was, how do we create a new interpretation of traditional art, so people will still be able to look at the art and identify with what so many societies have been trained over generations to understand as Catholic iconography, but it being a new LGBTQ twist of Catholic iconography representing the LGBTQIA+ community. So is it Jesus as a member or an ally of the LGBTQ community? How did we represent that? We put out audition notices to try to find people who identified with this specific topic and who weren't just models. We didn't want to find the beautiful models, which are easy to find on all the casting websites. We wanted to find people who were actors, who also had an emotional, spiritual connection to this topic. And we ended up finding a wide array of people. Actually, we had more than 500 people audition for this. And when we put out the audition notices, had no idea if anybody would submit to this. And it was a quite an amazing experience as creatives to see that we really created an opportunity for people to represent themselves. So we have, how do you represent an LGBTQIA+ Jesus? It can't be one person, because the LGBTQIA community is really a diverse movement. And because of that, we have numerous Jesuses, or as we kind of joke, we call them Jesi, because there are so many. And if the idea is God being in everybody and everybody being God, then we had to find people who could represent as many people as possible. So those people who, when you look at them, they could be of the exact specific ethnicity, culture, race, gender that they are, but also could possibly look like they're part of another ethnicity, race, gender, and people who also represent true, genuine intersections of those different identities, because we needed people to be able to look at the art and see what they wanted to see. The art is in the eye of the beholder. And that was very much the approach and the challenge in casting people for this project, let alone doing this in the middle of a pandemic.
Oh yeah, you did it. You did that as well. I would have thought it was very rare that we have art where people themselves, just ordinary people, have tried to look like Christ in some way. I mean, I can't think of any examples. I can't think of any other art or films where they've really explored that. But I mean, we all know we're made in the image of God, or in Christ's image, but we don't really think about it, do we?
Well, that's how this project started, because Mark was going through whatever spiritual discomfort, which, as anybody who is spiritual knows, that the discomfort is something you listen to. And he was going through this spiritual discomfort, and I found him searching online again and again over the course of, I think it might have even been months, where he was looking for an image that represented him as an LGBTQ Catholic. And the things that he found, they weren't quite sufficient for him, or they felt hokey, or not produced as well, or not done as well as what he was used to seeing in the churches, or things that were done well but didn't quite represent exactly what he needed. And finally I said, hey, you married a creative person. I know I'm Jewish, I know I'm Israeli, but I'm a filmmaker, I'm an actor, I'm an artist. Let's create it, because if you're looking for this, somebody who's so connected to Catholic communities and LGBTQ communities, and if you can't find this, imagine what the people who aren't connected to the LGBTQ organizations and the Catholic organizations are feeling. Because if you have this lacuna, this empty need, they must have an even greater empty need. So let's create something that is not only for you, but it's for everybody like you. And that's how this project began.
But Penelope, you're completely correct. You know, we say we are all created in likeness and image of God, or that God is in all our brothers and sisters, neighbors, friends, family. But do people really believe it? They certainly don't act like it. This is why I say sometimes words don't get the job done. And so we wanted to create a visual depiction of God in all of us. And that's why one Jesus wasn't enough. When we got going on this project, one isn't fair, frankly. And so we tried to be as diverse and as inclusive as possible to really show, not just tell, but show God in all of us. And you've all mentioned this, but I want to emphasize that it was really important to me to have something that appealed to tradition and that stuck with tradition, albeit being sort of radically reimagined. But I wanted people to be able to look at these images and say, oh, that's Jesus. That's a gay Jesus, or that's a lesbian Jesus. If you depart too much from tradition, you're going to lose that connection altogether.
So you've got the crown of thorns and yeah.
But we also have enough imagery there where if people can imagine things different ways. So for example, some of the women in poses without the crown of thorns, they could be Naomi. Maybe one of them is Ruth. Maybe one of them is Mary Magdalene. And so the diversity that we try to achieve here even goes way beyond, is it Jesus or maybe somebody else from the scriptures?
Well, that does, I'll come to, someone's put their hand up, so I'll come to them, but that is a very interesting topic. Did Jesus have to come as a man? And what kind of man did he come as? Probably had to come as a man because women's testimony wasn't believed then, I think. Anyway, I will ask Cecilia. Cecilia, you got your hand up, but I can't see your face. Do you want to unmute?
Yes, thanks very much, Penny. Are you able to actually see the chat? Because I posed a question in the chat.
Yes.
But it wasn't getting picked up. And the camera, if the camera comes on, our signal's not very good.
Okay.
So that's why we're keeping it off. And I'm actually Julia Madden. I've signed up for everything, but I'm actually watching it with Cecilia.
Okay,
so the question's from Julia. So would you like me to ask it?
Yes, Julia.
Yeah. So it was just to say really that the trailer just looked fantastic. Thanks so much for making what's going to be, I'm sure, an amazing documentary. But I was curious about how the funding worked and whether that was problematic, given that it's certainly not mainstream. I imagine that there wouldn't be ready support for it financially. And then I was wondering about the screening of it and what your thinking was about that and where it might get screened and, will it be screened? Will there be certain limitations to that? So sorry, it's a bit dry, but I just thought I was interested in that aspect.
Those aren't dry questions. Those were parts of our challenges. So Mark.
Sure. So funding was challenging. We actually did it all of ourselves. Excuse me, God blessed us to be in a position to do that. However, it was not easy at all. We didn't make probably the effort we should have to try to go out ahead of time, but we've also learned throughout this process that funding for a project like this is difficult. The topic is a hard one. Some do find it too controversial. Some sources, I think a lot of elements within the film industry, honestly, are not very enthused about the topic of religion in general. And we've encountered that in a couple different respects in screenings. We are getting assistance at a very high level in connection with film festivals. And I've learned as somebody who was not a filmmaker before this, that film festivals really require your own miniature team of people lobbying for you. Well, it's hard when it's just the two of us, two independent filmmakers, but we do have somebody pretty high up in the film industry world helping with this. And he just has told us pretty bluntly, religion doesn't really sell that well. So we've had a little challenge on that front. very fortunate to get into the many film festivals that we have, including the Woodstock Film Festival, which was, in technical terms, a very big deal. And then you get it from the other direction. We've had any number of churches pass. They don't want to have anything to do with it. When we do screen it, it's almost never on church property.
Sometimes it is.
Yeah, but that's definitely been the exception. It's usually at a university, nearby, that's also heavily involved. And then we've had some universities say yes, then change their mind because they thought that it was too sensitive of a topic. Now, the film is not anti-religion. And in fact, it's very respectful of religion. I would not have been part of this or had anything to do with it if it was going to be anything other than that. It challenges church doctrine. There's no question about it. And it takes some of the pain that it has caused, that church has caused, head on. But we are not pounding religion here for the sake of pounding it. And I think that actually would have sold more in the eyes of some, but we refuse to go down that road. But notwithstanding our efforts to be respectful, some people just don't want to touch it. I think it's easier to just not do anything, which is unfortunate. And people aren't going to stand up. And so we've had a challenge from that angle as well. So, and by the way, when we screen it now, we actually, whatever assistance we can get by way of honoraria, which is important for us, all goes towards getting the word out, which is very necessary. When we get this thing available online in the coming couple of months, we'll even get an assistance from the streaming platforms to promote it. That will be entirely on us. So all donations are welcome and try to help get the word out, because it's actually necessary. We're going to have our own PR and everything to help do that. And we hired Jim Martin's PR person to help us do this, but none of it is free. So yes, long answer to your question, not a dry one at all, I don't think, because it gets to the practicalities of this cause and getting something out like this.
So on the website, on the wonderfullymadefilm.com and the LGBTQreligion.com, both links go to the same place. There is a donate button. There is a place where you can support. And we very much see the audiences and the communities as part of the team that is in regards to getting the word out, but also if anybody's able to donate any sum. There's no sum that's too small, and of course there's no sum that's too large to help not only just recoup the costs that we're still paying for, but also the continued costs of marketing, of PR, of how to get the word out. All of that takes time and money. So if you're interested, please go to that link on the site and support the film. I also saw the film of the question in the chat of how the film can be seen. So very soon the film will be available on most streaming platforms, from Amazon to Apple to Google and other sites. So you'll be able to see it very soon at home, at your own homes, on your own devices, just like you see other films and streaming content. And the art is going to be available within the coming weeks, also to be found on those same websites.
And we will, when you have released it for pay-per-view, we will put that link under the recording of today, so that everybody who comes to Spirit Unbounded in the future can find it. So many questions still coming in. What have you been able to explore? Did you make the film before the anti-homosexuality legislation in Uganda? Was that something that's come since you made the film?
Yes, we actually started this project a little over 5 years ago.
Oh, wow. Okay.
When you have day jobs, you can only work on a film sporadically here and there as it fits in. And so we didn't spend all of our time during that 5 years, but we began it a long time ago. And I think that was at least 3 years before Uganda, or 4 years before Uganda.
And it was, we laughed to ourselves every time we thought we finished the film and it was picture lock and we were done and we're finished editing. All of a sudden there would be a new announcement from the church. And there were times that I said, oh my gosh, Mark, the church hasn't had an opinion about this in years. And all of a sudden, now we finished the film and now the church has an opinion. They said, now we have to open the film again and address it. So the news cycle was changing, and the Pope was sharing messages. And that's one of the, while it was challenging as filmmakers, where we kept trying to just finish the film, there was news that was coming out. And from a democratic perspective, it's exciting to see when the people force the leadership to comment. It's that the church is an organization, just like so many democratic powers. It's the power of the people. If we want to see a change, we represent the leadership just as much as they represent us. And we're seeing that in real time right now within the Catholic communities.
Yeah,
So
we are. We're definitely seeing it. We're seeing it. And I think, as Mark alluded to, I think Pope Francis has understood that if you can just untap the genie that is grassroots support, that's where it will come from. He can't possibly take on the hierarchy as it is on his own. But with everybody, people power. I mean, there's like 3,000 bishops and there's billions, well, 1.3 billion Catholics who are, as we've discovered with Spirit Unbounded, have their own really mature views of how to live as Christians today, with all the challenges that we face and with all the new science and with all the knowledge that we now have. It just doesn't fit with the Catholic teaching. But I wanted to ask you, how you were saying that religion doesn't really sell unless you're hitting it, which, you know, you said, Mark, which I completely understand. We've had the same problem with Spirit Unbounded. But is your film successful with people who are not of any faith? Are they intrigued?
I mean, that's the answer. The answer is both yes and no. The LGBTQ, there are many within the LGBTQ community who have been so pained by religion, and there's a history of religion and people using religion as a justification for the targeting and the exclusion of LGBTQ people, that in response, LGBTQ people, many LGBTQ people have chosen to exclude religion. So there has been a tough sell there. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with that. And it's a shame. And one of the other reasons we made this film, at least that I really had in putting this film together, is it would be great if it was also used as a tool to welcome people back. Because there's a line I have in the film. I'm in the film. I wasn't the plan, but I'm in it a little bit. I personally believe that the spiritual realm is the most one of the most profound dimensions of human experience, and it's a shame to lose all connection with that. And I think that people who say they don't have religion still can appreciate what I'm talking about. I think it's actually part of the DNA of the human race to have something that's spiritual or a draw to something greater than ourselves. And I don't think it's helpful when people cut themselves off from that. And I understand why they do. But if we can take some iconography that has become associated with something that's very exclusionary and mean-spirited and open it up, maybe it can be useful in helping to bring people back, which I think is critical for the future of the Catholic Church. I hate to say it in such dire terms, but if we're not careful, the church, as we recognize, it's going to be gone in 3 generations.
Yeah.
Might be gone sooner than that. There's got to be a real fundamental sea change in approach here, or that's what's going to happen.
And the other thing is, we've had audiences, non-Catholic audiences and non-religious audiences, who have seen the film and really were quite educated by it. They said, wow, I never knew that LGBTQ Catholics had such an issue. I never knew that there was this issue within Catholicism. I never knew that there was this issue within the LGBTQ movements. And it's compelling, as the creators of this project, to see people who didn't know and frankly didn't care about these topics, and all of a sudden were informed, in a way that we help them create their own opinions. As the director, I also narrate certain sections with the voiceover. My opinion is not in the film because it wasn't about my opinion at all. And from that creative standpoint, it's exciting to see how we provided information for people to create their own opinions by showing the wide array of what is happening within the challenges and the aspirations of LGBTQ Catholics.
I think that ties in very much with a question. I mean, Luca is saying he thinks you've hit the wonderful balance between education and entertainment here, the art being the entertainment, because unless we educate, a lot of people don't have the tools with which to do the thinking that you're requiring so that they can open up and help create a just, safe, inclusive world within different faiths. So we are very, very pleased that you have been able to do this. And Luca wondered how difficult it was to get that balance. I know you've touched on it already, Mark, but he wanted to know the balance between not being too critical of religion, but being sufficiently to actually be doing something as radical as you've done. And did you spend hours working out how to balance it?
We spent hundreds, probably thousands of hours on this project, and that balance was always kind of implicit in everything that we were doing, including the very concept of the art, which I mentioned before, had to show respect for tradition, yet reimagining it. And I like to use the phrase reimagine, not shatter tradition, because I didn't want to shatter tradition. And so it was a little bit of a mental and emotional wrestling match throughout the entire film to try to make sure that we achieve that balance. Now, every person might view it differently and say we didn't achieve a balance here, or one person will say it went this way versus that way. But we did our best, and we do talk about church dogma. I mean, there are many instances where we're talking about words from the Bible and also formal church dogma. Excuse me. And we had to walk a fine line there because we wanted to keep this film accessible to people without turning it into real heavy theology. The theology's unavoidable, but it had to be there. So part of that balance we were walking that you've asked in your question went to how we presented the dogma as well.
Yeah. And did you need to consult theologians, or not?
Oh, absolutely. We consulted theologians throughout the process. And Mark has been so involved within his own Catholic life and Catholic education and Catholic experiences, which is why eventually I noticed that I had to turn the cameras on Mark as well, because he very much also represents part of the target audience of this. And I was seeing how he was being affected, and I was seeing how other people who were part of the crew and the cast were being affected. And that's how this documentary kept growing, to see how, oh, are we still there? We just got
a something happened. I can't.
Do you still see us and hear us?
Yeah, we can.
So, I kind of lost my train of thought, but basically, how do we represent people was a challenge in doing it fairly, doing it authentically, and doing it in a way that is not meant to offend, but in a way that's meant to include and draw people in. As you can imagine, we receive so many hate messages from people, and so many people who are against this project and against the film, but they haven't even given it a chance. Maybe just read 2 lines about what this project is about, and they're immediately against it. So hopefully those people will give it a chance and view it, and maybe they won't be so against it, because truly we try to represent many different opinions and many different realities, and allowing the audience to formulate their own opinions.
Well, listen, we can't wait to see it. I will go to your website to look at the art as soon as it's up. We will put the link to your film, but can I just end with one question to you? How has it changed your relationship? It must have done. It sounds like such a journey for you both.
You go. I don't know. What's you know, we've always been blessed, and I mean really blessed, with an unusually close and solid relationship. From early on, in after meeting one another, we knew where we were going. Excuse me, and it's been a beautiful journey that will celebrate its 9th anniversary on December 3rd. But when you get as deep into one another's faiths as we have with each other, it can only deepen the relationship as a whole. I love everything about Judaism, not its negative elements, of course, but there are so many more beautiful and positive elements in it. And that is in part why I am wearing this in these last few days. This is a rosary with a Star of David on it. And it is in part my one small thing I can do to show some of my solidarity with my husband and with all Jewish people everywhere. And I really ask, and we've asked everybody who is non-Jewish, reach out to people who are, because they are really in a lot of pain right now. And it's one that we all share, because our Jewish brothers and sisters, family and friends, they are our brothers and sisters in faith, as I believe Pope Francis put it. And so I've always been very blessed to be in a relationship where there was this mutual respect on everything, but especially including our respective faiths. And it's how I can't do anything other than wear this today, wear this for as long as we need to in this awful time. And it's how I just enjoy celebrating all things Jewish with my wonderful husband and wonderful in-laws.
Thank you so much. Shall I say the date today is the 11th of October, because this will be significant, I think. Thank you so much. I'm sure people, once this is posted on the YouTube channel, will then put their comments, and so every now and then I might encourage you to go and have a little look. I'll give you the link. But thank you again very much. And may your families and friends be safe, Yuval, and I hope you have more news from them soon.
Thank you.
Thank you,
everyone.